I sat in that corner booth at Giovanni's, my favorite upscale Italian restaurant downtown, staring at the glass of cranberry juice in front of me. My daughter Jessica and her husband Derek had just excused themselves to get the car from valet parking. The moment they disappeared through those heavy wooden doors, a young waiter rushed to my table. His face was pale, his hands trembling. He glanced over his shoulder before leaning close to me. His whisper made my blood freeze in my veins. "Ma'am, please, don't drink that juice. I saw him put something in it when you weren't looking. I'm so sorry, I don't know what to do, but please don't drink it." My hand stopped halfway to the glass. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears. The waiter stood there, his name tag reading Tyler, and he looked absolutely terrified. "What do you mean?" I managed to whisper back. "Who put something in my drink?" Tyler's eyes darted toward the entrance. "Your son-in-law, the man in the gray suit. I saw him pour something from a small vial into your juice while you were looking at the dessert menu. I swear to you, I'm not making this up. I could lose my job for this, but I couldn't just stand by and watch." My mind reeled. Derek? Why would Derek poison me? This was my daughter's husband, the man she'd been married to for 3 years. He'd always been attentive, maybe almost too attentive. "But poison? Are you absolutely certain?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Yes, ma'am. I was clearing the table next to yours. I saw everything clearly." Before I could respond, the restaurant doors swung open. Jessica and Derek walked back in, all smiles. Jessica's blonde hair bounced as she walked, her designer dress swishing around her knees. Derek looked impeccable in his tailored suit, his smile revealing perfect white teeth. They noticed Tyler standing at our table. Derek's smile didn't waver, but something changed in his eyes, something cold. "Is everything all right?" Derek asked, his tone friendly, but his gaze fixed on Tyler like a predator watching prey. I felt my throat tighten. My hand moved away from the juice glass. "I'm not feeling well," I said. "I think I need to leave." Jessica's face creased with concern. "Oh, Mom, what's wrong? You seemed fine a minute ago." She reached for my hand. "At least finish your juice first. You love cranberry juice, and you haven't even touched it." Tyler cleared his throat. "Perhaps the lady would prefer some fresh water instead?" Derek's eyes narrowed. "Why are you still at our table? We didn't call for anything." My heart hammered. I looked at my daughter, the little girl I'd raised, the child I'd nursed through fevers and heartbreaks, and I forced myself to ask the question, "Derek, did you put something in my drink?" The silence that followed felt like a physical weight. Jessica laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Derek would never." She looked at her husband. "Honey, what is she saying?" Derek's face transformed into an expression of wounded hurt. "Helene, I'm shocked you would even ask me that. I've been nothing but devoted to this family since I married Jessica." Tyler stood straighter. "Sir, I saw what I saw." Derek pulled out his phone with deliberate slowness. "I'm calling the manager. This is harassment. This waiter is making false accusations against me." "I'm not lying," Tyler said, his voice steady despite his obvious fear. "I watched you put something in her juice." Within minutes, the restaurant manager arrived, a balding man with nervous hands. Derek explained the situation with perfect calm, painting himself as the victim of a delusional server. Jessica kept touching my arm, whispering that maybe I was confused, that I'd been stressed lately. Then the police arrived. 2 officers, one older with graying hair, one younger with sharp eyes. Derek immediately took control of the situation, his lawyer voice smooth and authoritative. He insisted they test the juice right there. "I have nothing to hide," he said. "This waiter is clearly trying to cause trouble, probably hoping for a payout or something. I want him arrested for harassment and false accusations." The officers agreed to run a field test on the juice. I watched, feeling like I was in a nightmare. The younger officer used a testing strip, waited, then looked at his partner. "There's something in here. Looks like crushed sleeping medication." My stomach dropped. Derek's face remained calm, almost pleased. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a prescription bottle. "These are mine, prescribed for insomnia. Look at the name." He showed it to the officers. "I take these every night." I had them in my pocket because I was planning to stop at the pharmacy after dinner to refill the prescription. He turned to Tyler. "This waiter must have seen my medication, stolen a few pills, and crushed them into the juice to set me up. Check his background. I bet he's done this kind of thing before." Tyler's face went white. The older officer asked for his identification, ran it through their system. After a few minutes, the officer's expression changed. "You have a prior arrest. Theft, 5 years ago." "That was different," Tyler protested. "I was desperate. I made a mistake, but I wouldn't." Derek interrupted smoothly. "Officers, I want to press charges. This man tried to poison my mother-in-law and blame it on me. He's clearly unstable." But then Derek did something that made my blood run cold. He pulled out folded papers from his other pocket. "I also have these," he said quietly. "Medical power of attorney for Helene, and documentation from her doctor regarding early-stage dementia." I felt the world tilt. "What? I don't have dementia. I've never seen those papers." Jessica gripped my hand tighter. "Mom, we didn't want to worry you, but you've been having episodes, forgetting things, getting confused. Remember last month when you couldn't find your car keys and accused the neighbor of stealing them? They were in your purse the whole time. That had happened, but I'd just been distracted, stressed. It wasn't dementia." The officers exchanged glances. The older one spoke gently. "Ma'am, is it possible you might be confused about who put what in your drink?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm not confused. This young man tried to help me, but I could see they didn't believe me. They arrested Tyler right there in the restaurant." He looked at me as they led him away, his eyes full of despair and apology. Derek put his arm around Jessica. "Officers, given my mother-in-law's condition and the fact that she almost ingested sleeping medication, shouldn't she be checked at a hospital?" Jessica nodded, tears in her eyes. "Real tears, or fake?" I couldn't tell anymore. "Yes, please. I'm so worried about her." The officers agreed. Despite my protests, I was taken to the emergency room, and as I sat in that ambulance, I realized with growing horror that I'd been set up perfectly. And somehow, impossibly, my own daughter was part of it. The emergency room lights were too bright, too harsh. I sat on a paper-covered examining table while a young doctor shined a light in my eyes and asked me questions. "What year was it? Who was the president? Could I count backward from 100 by sevens?" I answered everything correctly, but I could feel the sedative they'd given me earlier starting to work. Earlier. Before the restaurant. I suddenly remembered feeling unusually drowsy after drinking water at home before Jessica and Derek had picked me up for dinner. Had that water been drugged too? "I need to tell you something," I said to the doctor. "I think I was drugged before I even got to the restaurant, earlier today, at home." The water I drank tasted slightly bitter. The doctor made a note but exchanged a glance with the nurse. Jessica was standing in the corner of the exam room, her face a mask of concern. "Mom, you're not making sense. You were fine at home, remember? We had tea together before we left. Had we?" My memory felt fuzzy around the edges. The doctor ordered blood tests. When the results came back, his expression was serious. "Mrs. Brennan, there are traces of sedatives in your system, more than what would have been in that juice at the restaurant." Jessica gasped. "Oh my God. Mom, have you been taking pills? Pills that weren't prescribed to you?" "No," I said. But even to my own ears, I sounded uncertain. The drugs in my system were making me foggy. A psychiatric consultant was called. A woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice. She asked me questions about my life, my routines, my relationships. I tried to explain about the restaurant, about Derek, about the waiter who'd tried to warn me. But the more I talked, the more agitated I became, and the more concerned everyone looked. "I think we should keep you overnight for observation," the psychiatrist said, "just to be safe." I wanted to refuse, but I was so tired. so confused. I let them admit me. Jessica stayed with me until I fell asleep, stroking my hair like she used to do when she was a little girl, and I was the one comforting her. When I woke the next morning, Jessica was there with fresh clothes and my purse. "They're releasing you to my care," she said. "I'm going to stay with you for a few days, just to help out." Back at my house, my beautiful craftsman-style home that I'd owned for 30 years, mortgage paid off, worth over $800,000 in this market, Jessica made tea. I watched her carefully, but she drank from the same pot. We sat in my living room, sunlight streaming through the lace curtains I'd hung 2 decades ago. "I need to use the bathroom," Jessica said, setting down her cup. The moment she left the room, I moved. Her purse was on the couch. My hands shook as I opened it and rifled through the contents. Makeup, wallet, keys, and then a folder. A thick folder with legal documents. My heart stopped as I read the first page. Conservatorship petition, filed in court. Scheduled for a hearing in 2 weeks. My name was all over it. Jessica Brennan Sutherland, petitioner. Helene Brennan, proposed conservatee. I flipped through more pages. Medical assessments from a Dr. Raymond Morrison, a name I'd never heard, declaring me incompetent due to progressive dementia and impaired judgment. Bank statements showing withdrawals I'd never made, transfers I'd never authorized, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, and the signatures on the authorization forms looked like mine. The handwriting was nearly perfect, but I hadn't written any of it. I heard the toilet flush. Quickly, I took photos of the documents with my phone, then shoved everything back in her purse. When Jessica returned, I was sitting exactly where she'd left me, sipping my tea. But inside, I was screaming. I waited 2 hours, until Jessica went outside to make a phone call. Then I confronted her with what I'd found. I showed her the photos on my phone. Her face changed. Just for a moment, the mask slipped. Her eyes went cold, calculating. Then she smiled, sweet and concerned, and pulled out her own phone. She called Derek. He arrived in 15 minutes. He must have been waiting nearby. They sat across from me in my own living room, on the couch my late husband Thomas and I had picked out 20 years ago, and they explained everything so calmly. "Helene," Derek said, using my first name like we were equals, like he had any right. "We're protecting your assets. You've been making poor financial decisions. You're vulnerable at your age, especially as a widow. There are scams everywhere targeting people like you." "I haven't made any poor decisions," I said. "Those withdrawals weren't me. Those signatures are forged." Jessica leaned forward. "Mom, you're 67 years old. Dad died 3 years ago. You're alone in this big house. We're just trying to help you." "I don't need help. I need you to leave my house. Right now." Derek smiled. "We can't do that. I have medical power of attorney. It's right there in the documents you photographed. Completely legal." "I never signed that." "The signature looks pretty authentic to me," he said. I grabbed my phone. "I'm calling my attorney, Martin Shaw. He'll straighten this out." I dialed the number I'd had memorized for decades. Disconnected. I stared at my phone, then searched for Martin's law office online. The website was gone. I found an obituary notice. Not dead, but retired. Closed his practice 6 months ago and moved to Arizona. "Looking for Martin?" Jessica asked softly. "He retired. We got a lovely card from him. Didn't we tell you?" No, they hadn't told me. I'd been completely isolated without even knowing it. I tried calling friends. Patricia Henry, who I'd known for 40 years. She answered, but her voice was stiff, uncomfortable. "Helene, honey, Jessica called me last week. She's worried about you. She said you might call with some strange stories. Maybe you should rest and let her take care of things for a bit." Patricia had believed them. Jessica had been poisoning my relationships for months, maybe longer, and I'd been oblivious. Derek stood up, stretched, looked around my home with proprietary satisfaction. "We've already listed the house with a realtor," he said casually. "Got a buyer interested. Cash sale. $720,000. Quick close. You can't sell my house. Actually, once the conservatorship goes through, we can. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We already have a buyer lined up, and the paperwork just needs your signature, which we'll have the court authorize if necessary. Jessica added, We found a lovely facility for you, Mom. Serenity Pines Extended Care. They have wonderful staff, activities, everything you'll need. A nursing home? My voice came out as a whisper. It's for your own good, Jessica said. She stood and kissed my forehead. We'll take care of everything. You don't need to worry anymore. I barely slept that night. Jessica was in the guest room, and I kept hearing her moving around, going through my things. At 5:30 in the morning, while it was still dark, I got dressed quietly and slipped out of the house. I walked the 6 blocks to the police station. My feet hurt by the time I got there, but I didn't care. The same 2 officers from the restaurant were at the front desk, just ending their night shift. Please, I said, I need to file a report. My daughter and her husband are committing fraud. They've forged documents, stolen money from my accounts. They're trying to have me declared incompetent so they can take everything. The older officer recognized me. Ma'am, you're the lady from the restaurant, the confused one. I'm not confused. They're criminals. They're stealing from me. The younger officer spoke gently. Ma'am, we're aware of the conservatorship proceedings. That's a family court matter. It's not a criminal issue. You should work with your family and the court system. They forged my signature. That's a crime. Do you have proof of forgery? Expert analysis? I didn't. Just my word against documents that looked legitimate. The conservatorship hearing is scheduled, right? The older officer said. You can present your case to the judge. That's the proper venue. We can't interfere with a legal court process. I left the station feeling hopeless. I walked to my bank, First National, where I'd been a customer for 35 years. Surely they would help me. The branch manager, Susan Park, came out to meet me personally. Mrs. Brennan, how are you? Jessica called yesterday. She's so concerned about you. I need access to my accounts. Someone has been making unauthorized withdrawals. Susan's face was sympathetic but firm. I understand your concern, but given the situation and the upcoming conservatorship hearing, we can't make any changes to your accounts right now. It's bank policy. We need to wait for the court to make a determination. It's my money. Of course it is. And once the legal matters are sorted out, everything will be fine. She patted my hand like I was a child. I tried my online banking when I got home. Password incorrect. I tried the recovery process. It asked security questions I'd never set up. Someone had changed everything. I needed an attorney. A new one. I found one online, Patricia Reeves, with an office downtown. I called, explained my situation briefly, and she agreed to see me that afternoon. Patricia Reeves was in her 50s, professional, with sharp eyes. I sat in her office and told her everything. The restaurant, the drugging, the forged documents, the conservatorship petition, the stolen money. She listened carefully, taking notes. This is serious, she said. If what you're telling me is accurate, this is financial elder abuse, criminal fraud. We need to. Her desk phone rang. Her secretary said someone was here to see her. Before Patricia could respond, Derek walked into the office. Helene, he said, smiling warmly. I've been looking for you. Jessica is worried sick. He turned to Patricia. I'm Derek Sutherland. I'm Helene's son-in-law, and I hold her medical power of attorney. I'm glad she came to you. We need good legal advice for her situation. He sat down uninvited and pulled out papers. The same papers I'd photographed. He went through them methodically, pointing out the medical diagnoses, the documentation of my declining condition, the legal authorizations. Patricia listened. Her expression changed from sympathetic to cautious. I see, she said. This is more complex than I initially understood. Indeed, Derek said. Helene is a wonderful woman, but she's struggling. We're just trying to help her. Sometimes she gets confused and makes accusations. It's part of her condition. I'm not confused, I said, but Derek talked over me, calmly, rationally, with all his legal training on display. When we left her office, Patricia said she needed time to assess the situation. She'd call me, but I knew. I could see it in her eyes. She believed Derek. 2 days later, Patricia's office called. She couldn't take my case. Conflict of interest. Derek's law firm, Sutherland and Pierce, had connections to her firm. Too much potential for complications. I tried 3 more attorneys, same result. Derek had connections everywhere, or he'd gotten to them first. Then the mail arrived. Official court documents. The conservatorship hearing had been moved up. Instead of 2 weeks away, it was now in 5 days. An emergency motion, filed by Jessica, claiming I was deteriorating rapidly and needed immediate intervention. Attached was a police report from an incident I'd never heard of. According to the report, I'd tried to drive my car 2 days ago, crashed into a mailbox, and fled the scene. A neighbor had reported it. There was even a photo of a damaged mailbox. None of it had happened, but there it was, in an official police report. The judge assigned to my case was the Honorable Raymond Fletcher. I was running out of time and options. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my computer and started researching. If I couldn't get help from lawyers or police, maybe I could find some evidence, something undeniable. I started with Jessica, my daughter. I'd been so focused on Derek, but Jessica was the one who'd filed the conservatorship petition. Jessica was the one who'd been worried about me for months. I went back further. Before Derek, Jessica had been married before, 6 years ago, to a man named Thomas Brennan. That's why she still used the name Brennan. I'd always thought she kept it to honor him after he died. Thomas had died 3 years ago, the same year my husband passed away. Thomas's death was listed as a tragic accident. He'd fallen down the stairs at home. I kept searching. Thomas had been wealthy, a successful commercial real estate developer. His estate had gone entirely to Jessica, but then I found something else. An obituary from 2.5 years ago. Bernard Brennan, age 83, survived by his son Thomas, who had predeceased him. Bernard had been in a nursing home, suffering from Alzheimer's disease. I dug deeper, searching through archived news articles. I found a small item buried in a local paper. The nursing home where Bernard had lived had filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services, suspecting financial abuse. But the case had been closed after Bernard's death. The article mentioned that Bernard's conservator, his daughter-in-law Jessica, had liquidated all his assets to pay for his care. Over $300,000 spent in just 6 months. My hands shook as I kept reading. Bernard had died 6 months after his son Thomas. Jessica had been his conservator. She'd drained his estate completely, claiming it all went to medical expenses. Then Bernard had died peacefully in his sleep. I thought about my own situation, the conservatorship petition, the plan to liquidate my assets, the nursing home. This was a pattern. Jessica and Derek were professional predators. They targeted elderly family members, gained control of their finances, drained everything, and then the victims died. Sometimes in accidents, sometimes peacefully in their sleep in nursing homes. I printed everything, every article, every document, every piece of evidence I could find. And I realized something even more horrifying. If they'd done this to Bernard Brennan and Thomas Brennan, if they were doing it to me, how many others had there been? I spent 3 days preparing. I organized all my evidence about Bernard Brennan, about Thomas's suspicious death, about the pattern of financial abuse. I made charts, timelines, documented everything. I practiced what I would say to the judge. Jessica seemed unconcerned. She came and went from my house as she pleased, making herself at home. She even redecorated my guest room, moving in permanently, it seemed. "You're wasting your time, Mom," she said, watching me work on my presentation. "The judge will see that we're just trying to help you. The judge will see that you're a thief and a murderer." She just smiled. The morning of the hearing arrived. It was held in a small courtroom in the Family Law Division. Judge Raymond Fletcher presided, a man in his late 60s with an impatient expression and a reputation for moving through his docket quickly. Jessica and Derek had hired an attorney, Graham Sutton, a man in an expensive suit with perfect silver hair and a voice like honey. I was representing myself, carrying my boxes of evidence and research. The hearing started. Sutton presented his case smoothly. He called witnesses. First, a neighbor named Carol Hendricks, who I barely knew. She testified that she'd noticed me seeming confused lately, wandering in my yard late at night, forgetting to bring in my trash cans. I'd done no such thing. But there she was, under oath, lying through her teeth. Then came a woman who claimed to be my longtime friend, Margaret Chen. I'd never seen her before in my life. She testified tearfully about how I'd forgotten her birthday, called her by the wrong name, seemed disoriented when we had lunch. Next was a pharmacist, stating I'd come in to pick up prescriptions, and seemed confused about what medications I was taking. Each witness painted me as declining, forgetful, in need of help. Then came the medical expert, Dr. Raymond Morrison, the doctor whose name was on all those assessments. He'd never examined me, but he testified about my documented cognitive decline based on reports from Jessica and Derek, as well as the medical records they'd provided him. Finally, a bank representative testified about my erratic financial behavior, the unusual withdrawals and transfers, all the forged transactions. When it was my turn, I stood up with my evidence. I started to explain about Bernard Brennan, about the pattern, about how Jessica and Derek had done this before. Judge Fletcher cut me off. Mrs. Brennan, Bernard Brennan's estate is not relevant to this proceeding. We're here to determine your current mental capacity, not to relitigate closed probate matters. But it shows a pattern, I insisted. They're financial predators. They've done this before. Sutton objected. Your Honor, Mrs. Brennan is making wild, unfounded accusations against her loving daughter and son-in-law. This kind of paranoid thinking is exactly why we're here. Sustained, Judge Fletcher said. Mrs. Brennan, please confine yourself to relevant matters regarding your own situation. I tried to explain about the poisoning at the restaurant, about the waiter who'd tried to warn me. Judge Fletcher's expression grew more impatient. Mrs. Brennan, I have the police report here. The waiter in question was arrested for that very incident. He tampered with your drink. That's not evidence in your favor. He was trying to help me. Derek drugged my juice. Sutton stood. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of confused, paranoid thinking that concerns us. Mrs. Brennan has been making these accusations for days now, despite clear evidence to the contrary. She's unable to process information rationally. The more I tried to make my case, the more agitated I became. Judge Fletcher warned me twice to calm down, or he'd have me removed from the courtroom. Then Jessica took the stand. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Your Honor, I love my mother so much. This is breaking my heart. But I can't stand by and watch her deteriorate. She needs help. And then she dropped the bomb. I'm also 3 months pregnant, Jessica said, her voice breaking. She pulled out an ultrasound picture, passed it to the judge. This is my first baby, my mother's first grandchild. The stress of Mom's decline is affecting my pregnancy. My doctor says I need to reduce stress, or I could miscarry. I'm terrified of losing both my baby and my mother. The courtroom atmosphere shifted immediately. Judge Fletcher's face softened. Congratulations, he said gently. Jessica continued, tears flowing now. I just want to protect my mother and make sure my baby has a grandmother who's safe and cared for. I want my child to know its grandmother. That's all I want. That's why we're doing this. For love. It was a masterful performance. I watched the judge's face and knew I'd lost. Sutton wrapped up quickly after that, emphasizing Jessica's devotion, her pregnancy, her pure motives. Judge Fletcher didn't even take a recess to deliberate. He ruled from the bench. I find that Helene Brennan lacks the capacity to manage her own affairs. Jessica Brennan Sutherland is hereby appointed conservator of the person and estate of Helene Brennan, effective immediately. Derek Sutherland is appointed co-conservator. All of Mrs. Brennan's assets are to be managed by the conservators pending proper accounting and management. Mrs. Brennan is ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluation at a facility to be determined by the conservators. He looked at me over his reading glasses. Mrs. Brennan, I know this feels difficult, but sometimes accepting help is the hardest and bravest thing we can do. Your daughter loves you. Let her help you. The gavel came down. It was over. Back at the house, Jessica and Derek dropped all pretense. They started boxing up my belongings immediately. They'd already arranged everything. I was moving to Serenity Pines Extended Care Facility the next morning. It's not even assisted living, I said numbly. It's a nursing home. It's what you need, Derek said. I sat in my bedroom that night, surrounded by moving boxes, and felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. Even when my husband died, I'd had hope, had friends, had a future. Now I had nothing. The walls were closing in, and I couldn't see any way out. The medical transport van arrived at 8 in the morning. 2 attendants, professional and polite, helped me into the vehicle. Jessica kissed my cheek before I left. I'll visit soon, Mom. Once you're settled in. Serenity Pines Extended Care Facility was in an older part of town. The building was a converted hospital from the 1960s, all institutional tile and fluorescent lights. It smelled of disinfectant and something else, something sad and stale. My room was on the 2nd floor. Small, maybe 12 feet by 12 feet, with 2 beds. My roommate was a woman in her 80s named Dorothy, who stared at the television all day and rarely spoke. There was one window, overlooking the parking lot. This was my new home. A nurse came in with medication. Little paper cups with pills I didn't recognize. Time for your meds, Helene. I don't take any medication, I said. Doctor's orders. From your conservator. I don't need these. I'm not sick. The nurse's expression was sympathetic but firm. I have to follow orders. If you refuse, we'll have to note it in your chart, and Dr. Morrison will be notified. Dr. Morrison. The doctor who'd never examined me, but declared me incompetent. I took the pills. Within an hour, I felt foggy, disconnected. They were sedating me. Over the next week, I tried everything. I talked to staff members, explaining my situation. They listened politely but did nothing. The conservator had legal authority. Their hands were tied. I asked to make phone calls. Denied. Facility policy for residents with confusion issues. I needed conservator permission for outside communication. I tried to walk out the front door on my 3rd day there. Security stopped me gently but firmly. I wasn't allowed to leave unsupervised. Conservator's orders. I was literally imprisoned. Jessica visited once, in week 2. She brought papers for me to sign. Property sale documents, investment liquidation forms, beneficiary changes on my life insurance. I'm not signing anything, I said. Jessica shrugged, unbothered. That's fine. We'll just have the court appoint me signatory authority. Judge Fletcher is very understanding of our situation. She sat on my bed, looked around the depressing room. You know, Mom, this could have been so much easier if you'd just cooperated. We could have set you up in a nice condo, given you an allowance, let you live comfortably, but you had to fight. You had to make everything difficult. You're stealing from me. We're managing your assets, she corrected, and doing a good job of it. The house sold yesterday, by the way. $720,000. Cash buyer, quick close. Derek negotiated brilliantly. $720,000. At least $30,000 under market value. A quick sale to someone who probably didn't ask questions. Where's my money going? Jessica smiled. Well, this facility costs $6,000 a month. Your medical care, medications, therapy sessions, it adds up. And Derek and I need to be compensated for our time as conservators. The court allows reasonable fees, you know. Plus, we're decorating the nursery. You should see it, Mom. It's beautiful. Soft yellow walls, a white crib, a rocking chair, everything a baby needs. The baby that didn't exist, though I didn't know that yet. Your retirement accounts are being transferred to better management, she continued. Derek has excellent financial advisors. They'll make sure everything is invested properly. She stood, smoothed her dress. I'll visit again next month. Try to make some friends here, Mom. Join the activities. Bingo on Thursdays. After she left, I sat on my bed and cried for the first time since this nightmare began. I'd held it together through everything, but in that moment, I broke. I was 67 years old, trapped in a nursing home, watching my life savings being stolen, and there was nothing I could do. One of the nurse's aides found me crying. Her name was Carmen, a woman in her 30s with kind eyes. "Oh, honey," she said softly. She sat beside me and just let me cry. Over the next few days, Carmen and I talked. She'd seen cases like mine before, she said quietly. Families taking advantage of elderly members. It happened more than people realized. "Can you help me?" I asked desperately. "Can you call the police for me? Tell them what's happening." Carmen hesitated. "I could lose my job. Please. I'm begging you." She thought about it for 2 days. Finally, she agreed. We wrote out a detailed statement together. I told her everything. About the restaurant, the poisoning attempt, the forged documents, Bernard Brennan, the pattern of abuse. Carmen took notes, printed them out at a public library, and brought them to the police station on her day off. 3 days later, the police dismissed the complaint. They'd contacted Jessica, who explained that her mother was in a nursing home due to severe dementia and paranoid delusions. The officers told Carmen she was enabling a resident's delusions and should be more professional. Carmen apologized tearfully. "I tried. I'm so sorry. I can't do anything else. I could lose my nursing license." I understood. I told her so. But inside, I felt the last of my hope dying. Then, on a Tuesday evening in my 4th week at Serenity Pines, something happened that changed everything. A new patient was being admitted. I was in the common room, staring at a television I wasn't watching, when I heard voices at the front desk. A young man was signing in to visit someone. I looked up and froze. It was the waiter from the restaurant, Tyler. The one who'd tried to warn me. The one who'd been arrested because of me. But he wasn't here as a patient. He was visiting someone. I watched as he walked down the hall to one of the long-term care rooms. 30 minutes later, he came back out, looking sad and exhausted. He saw me. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by shock. He came over slowly. "Mrs. Brennan?" "Tyler," I whispered. He sat down next to me, looking around carefully to make sure no staff were watching. "What are you doing here? Why are you—" He trailed off, understanding dawning in his eyes. "They put you here." I nodded, and then, because I had nothing left to lose, I told him everything. The conservatorship, the stolen assets, the facility, the fact that I was trapped, and no one would help me. Tyler's face went pale as I spoke. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made my heart stop. "They did this to my family too. Jessica used to be married to my Uncle Thomas. We couldn't talk long there, in the common room where staff might overhear. Tyler gave me his phone number, written on a scrap of paper, and told me to call him if I could ever get access to a phone. Then he had to leave before visiting hours ended. But he came back 2 days later. This time, he brought his grandfather to a different area of the facility, a small courtyard where residents could sit outside. I managed to get myself out there. Tyler sat with me while his grandfather dozed in a wheelchair. "Tell me about Thomas," I said. Tyler's jaw clenched. "Thomas was my uncle, my mother's older brother. He was a good man, successful, generous, always helping family. 7 years ago, he married Jessica. We all thought she was nice, loved her even. What happened? 3 years after they got married, Thomas fell down the stairs at their house, died instantly, broken neck. Tyler's voice was flat, but I could hear the pain underneath. Jessica said it was an accident. He'd been drinking wine, slipped, fell. The police investigated, found nothing suspicious. But you suspected." "Not at first. Thomas was my uncle, but I was young, 22, dealing with my own problems. It wasn't until later that I started putting pieces together. He told me about Bernard, his grandfather. Thomas's father. After Thomas died, Bernard's Alzheimer's got worse. Jessica, as Thomas's widow, somehow got herself appointed as Bernard's conservator. The family was scattered, not paying close attention. She moved Grandpa into a facility. This facility, actually. Within 6 months, his entire estate was gone, over $300,000. Jessica said it was all medical expenses, care costs, medications. When family members questioned it, she had documentation for everything, but it was fraud. We couldn't prove it. And then Grandpa died. Peacefully in his sleep, they said. Once he was gone, the case closed. No victim, no crime. Tyler explained how the stress of losing his uncle and then watching his grandfather deteriorate while Jessica drained his assets had sent Tyler into a spiral. He'd lost his job, couldn't pay rent, made a stupid decision to steal food from a convenience store, got arrested. That conviction had destroyed his credibility. By the time I got my life back together, Jessica was gone, vanished. I searched for her for 2 years, and then I saw her at that restaurant with a different man, and I knew she was doing it again. To you. So you tried to warn me, and got arrested for my trouble. He smiled bitterly. The charges were eventually dropped. Not enough evidence. But I lost my job at the restaurant. Couldn't get another serving job with that arrest on my record, even though I was innocent. He gestured at the building behind us. I work here now. Kitchen staff, night shift. It's how I can afford to keep Grandpa in this place. Bernard was still alive, I realized. In advanced Alzheimer's, barely aware of his surroundings, but alive. Tyler, I found something. Before they locked me in here, I did research. I found information about Bernard's case, about the financial abuse investigation. His eyes sharpened. What kind of information? Documentation that the nursing home filed a complaint, that Adult Protective Services investigated, that there were concerns about the conservatorship. Where is it? I printed it out. It was in my house, but Jessica and Derek have my house now. Tyler thought for a moment. Derek. That's the new husband. What's his last name? Sutherland. Derek Sutherland. He's an attorney. Tyler pulled out his phone, started searching. His face changed as he read. Helene, look at this. He showed me a website, a genealogy site. Derek Sutherland's family tree, meticulously documented by some distant relative. Marriages, divorces, all public record. Derek had been married 4 times before Jessica. 4 times. Each wife had been from a wealthy family or had wealthy elderly relatives. And in each case, within a few years of the marriage, there was a death. An elderly parent, a grandparent, an accident, an illness. He's done this before, I whispered, multiple times. He's not even using his real name, Tyler said, scrolling further. He was born Derek Mitchell, changed it to Sutherland 8 years ago. Before that, he used other names. We sat in that courtyard, 2 people who'd been victimized by the same predators, and we started putting together a bigger picture. Derek and Jessica were a team, professional fraud artists who targeted elderly family members of their spouses. They got conservatorships, drained assets, and the victims died, sometimes in accidents, sometimes in nursing homes from natural causes. How many people have they killed? I asked. I don't know, but it's more than just our family, way more. We needed help, real help, but we had no credibility. Tyler had a criminal record. I was declared incompetent and locked in a nursing home. Who would believe us? We need proof, Tyler said. Undeniable proof. Evidence so strong they can't ignore it. How do we get that? I'm trapped here. I can't leave. I can't access my own documents. Tyler looked at the building, thinking. I work here. I have access to places regular visitors don't. And there are probably other victims in this facility, other people in conservatorships being drained by family members. If I can find documentation, patient records, financial records, that's illegal. If you get caught, I'm already destroyed, he said quietly. I've got nothing left to lose. But you do. You're still alive. We can still save you. Over the next 2 weeks, Tyler gathered information. He had access to the facility's administrative offices during his night shifts. He couldn't get into the secure files, but he could look at the public-facing information, the visitor logs, the conservator contact lists. He found 3 other residents in situations similar to mine. Elderly people with conservators who visited rarely, whose assets were being liquidated rapidly, who'd been admitted against their will. But then, one evening, Derek showed up unexpectedly. I was in my room when he walked in, closing the door behind him. No staff, no witnesses. His friendly mask was gone. He looked at me with cold, empty eyes. "Helene, we need to have a conversation. I've been very patient with you, but my patience is running out." I pressed my back against the wall. "What do you want?" "I want you to stop fighting. Stop talking to the staff about your situation. Stop making trouble." He stepped closer. "Accidents happen in nursing homes all the time. Patients fall. They choke. They stop breathing in the middle of the night. Do you understand what I'm saying? You're threatening to kill me." I'm explaining reality. He sat on my bed, casual. "You want to know something interesting? Your husband, Thomas, the district attorney, his heart attack 3 years ago? That wasn't natural." My blood turned to ice. "What?" Jessica added a little something to his medication. Every day for 6 months. Slow, steady, weakened his heart, and then one day, it just gave out. Massive coronary. Very sad. No one suspected a thing. He was telling me he'd helped murder my husband. The man I'd loved for 40 years. Bernard Brennan died peacefully in his sleep in this very facility. He was on a lot of medications, easy to adjust dosages, to add something that stops the heart. Who's going to question it? Old man with advanced Alzheimer's passes away. Expected. Natural. Thomas, Jessica's first husband? The stairs were slippery. She made sure of that. And she made sure he'd had plenty of wine that night. These things happen. He leaned forward. "So here's how this works, Helene. You can pass away peacefully, a natural death for a woman your age with your declining health. The staff will be sad but not surprised. Jessica will cry at your funeral. Will inherit what's left of your estate after your care expenses. Or what? Or you can continue to fight, continue to make accusations, continue to cause problems. In which case, your death will be more difficult, more painful. Maybe you have a nasty fall. Maybe you develop a sudden infection. Maybe you just waste away because you're refusing food and medication. It would take months, painful months, and the result would be the same. You'd die. We'd inherit." He stood up, straightened his jacket. 6 months. That's my timeline. Within 6 months, you'll be gone, one way or another. And then we move on to our next target. This is what we do, Helene. We've been doing it for 15 years, across multiple states. We're very good at it. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. Jessica doesn't know, does she? About all your previous victims. He smiled. Jessica thinks we've done this twice. Bernard and you. She doesn't know about the others. She doesn't need to know. She plays her part perfectly. You're a monster. I'm a businessman. This is just business. He walked to the door, paused. 6 months, Helene. Make your choice. Easy death or hard death. But either way, you die. After he left, I couldn't stop shaking. He'd just confessed to multiple murders, threatened to kill me, and there was nothing I could do. No one would believe me. If I told the staff, they'd think it was my dementia talking. If I told Tyler, what could he do? But then I thought about what Derek had said. 15 years. Multiple states. Multiple victims. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about stopping serial killers before they murdered again. And then I remembered something. Something important. Before I retired, I'd worked as a legal secretary and paralegal for 35 years. I knew how to build cases. I knew about evidence chains, documentation, legal procedure. I knew what prosecutors needed to get convictions. And I'd been married to a district attorney. Thomas had been district attorney for 23 years. I knew his colleagues, his friends. People who'd respected him, who'd trusted me. They just didn't know what was happening to me. Because Derek and Jessica had isolated me so thoroughly. But if I could reach those people, if I could give them evidence they couldn't ignore, maybe I had a chance. I called Tyler from a staff phone during a shift change when no one was watching. We need to build a case. A real case. The kind that prosecutors can't ignore. Can you help me? Yes, he said without hesitation. What do you need? Tyler brought me a book the next time he visited. Inside the dust jacket was a cheap prepaid phone. I hid it in my mattress. Over the next 3 weeks, we executed our plan carefully. Tyler contacted his grandfather's former attorney, a woman named Martha Feldman who'd retired but had always been suspicious of Jessica's handling of Bernard's estate. Martha agreed to help. Martha knew someone, a former FBI agent named Susan Delacroix, who'd specialized in financial crimes against the elderly before retiring. Susan had seen cases like ours before, and she was intrigued. Susan started investigating unofficially. She tracked Derek's history across state lines. She found death certificates, probate records, conservatorship filings. The pattern was undeniable. 8 clear victims. Over 15 years. Probably more that hadn't been documented. She found 2 other current victims. Elderly people in other states who were right now being drained by Derek, using different names, married to different women who might or might not know the full scope of his crimes. Martha helped Tyler organize all the evidence properly. Chain of custody, proper documentation, everything that would hold up in court. Susan submitted her findings to the FBI field office. Once they saw the scope of it, the interstate pattern, the clear evidence of serial financial exploitation and likely murder, they opened an official investigation. But they needed more. They needed a confession, or at least evidence that would prove Derek and Jessica knew what they were doing was criminal. That's where I came in. Susan arranged for me to wear a wire, a tiny recording device, hidden in a button on my cardigan. The FBI had a warrant, proper authorization, everything legal. Jessica and Derek came to visit 3 days later. They thought I'd given up. I'd been quiet, compliant, taking my medications without protest. They thought they'd broken me. We sat in a small visiting room, just the 3 of us. I had my cardigan on despite the warm day. I've been thinking, I said quietly, about what you said, Derek, about having choices. And? Derek looked pleased. If I cooperate, if I sign whatever you need, what happens to me? Jessica leaned forward. Mom, you'll be taken care of. You'll stay here, comfortable, safe. We'll visit. You'll want for nothing, until I die peacefully in my sleep. She hesitated. Derek answered, These things happen naturally, Helene. You're 67. Your health is declining. My health is fine. I'm not sick. Not yet, Derek said. His mask was slipping. But in a few months, you'll develop complications. Heart problems, maybe. Or a stroke. These things happen to women your age. You're going to kill me like you killed my husband. Your husband's death was natural, Jessica said, but her voice wavered. No, it wasn't, Derek told me. He told me about the medication you added to Thomas's prescriptions, how you poisoned him slowly over 6 months. Jessica's face went white. She turned to Derek. What is she talking about? Derek's expression hardened. She's confused, making things up. Am I? Is that why you told me about Bernard? About Thomas Brennan falling down the stairs? About your 15 years of doing this across multiple states? Derek? Jessica's voice rose. What is she saying? She's delusional, Derek snapped. But I could see doubt in Jessica's eyes now. How many others have there been? Just Bernard and her, Derek said. Liar. I looked at my daughter. He's been married 4 times before you. Each wife had wealthy elderly relatives. Each relative died under suspicious circumstances after Derek got himself appointed conservator or power of attorney. He's a serial killer, Jessica, and you helped him. That's not true. But Jessica was standing now, backing away from Derek. Derek stood too. Helene, shut up. Or what? You'll kill me right here? In a nursing home with staff and cameras? How would you explain that? His hand moved fast. He grabbed my arm, hard enough to bruise. You need to stop talking. Right now. Let go of me. I'll do whatever I need to do. You think you can threaten me? You're in a locked facility. You're declared incompetent. No one believes anything you say. I own you. You killed my husband. You killed Thomas Brennan. You killed Bernard and at least 8 other people. You're going to kill me. And then you'll move on to the next victim. Unless someone stops you. Derek's face twisted with rage. Fine. You want to know the truth? Yes, I killed them all. Your husband whined every night in his sleep, made it almost enjoyable to watch him die. Thomas Brennan was drunk enough. I barely had to push. Bernard was so far gone he didn't even know what was happening. And you're next. But it won't be peaceful anymore. You just lost that option. Jessica made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Derek turned to her. And you? You're in this just as deep. You think you can walk away? You helped me with Bernard. You helped with Helene. You're an accomplice to murder. If I go down, you go down. I didn't know, Jessica whispered. I didn't know about the others. You said Bernard was the first. You said. I said what I needed to say to get you to help me. And you did help. You played your part perfectly. The grieving daughter, the concerned wife. You're just as guilty as I am. The door opened. FBI agents poured in. Susan Delacroix was with them, along with 2 local police officers. FBI. Derek Sutherland, you're under arrest. Derek's face went blank with shock. He looked at me, at the cardigan I was wearing, and understanding dawned. You wired her. Everything you just said was recorded, Susan said. Full confession to multiple murders, conspiracy, elder abuse, fraud. You're done. They handcuffed him. Jessica stood frozen, crying. Jessica Brennan Sutherland, you're also under arrest as an accessory. I didn't know, Jessica sobbed. I swear I didn't know about all of them, just Bernard and Mom. He said we were protecting Mom, he said. You can explain it to your attorney, Susan said. They took them both away. I sat in that visiting room for a long time after they left. Susan sat with me. Are you all right? She asked. I don't know. My daughter just got arrested. My husband was murdered. My life was destroyed. Am I all right? No, but I'm alive. And they're stopped. Yes, they are. The legal process took months. Search warrants were executed. Derek and Jessica's house was searched. They found evidence linking Derek to at least 9 murders over 15 years. Drugs used for poisoning. Forged documents. Files on potential future victims. Derek's computer had detailed plans. He'd been researching his next targets. Elderly people with substantial assets whose adult children he could manipulate or seduce. The conservatorship was dissolved immediately. Judge Fletcher came under investigation for his handling of my case. Turns out he'd ruled in favor of suspicious conservatorships multiple times, always quickly, always without proper investigation. He was eventually removed from the bench. My assets were restored. The house sale was reversed. The buyers, a nice couple who'd had no knowledge of the fraud, were compensated. I got my home back. My bank accounts were returned to my control. Jessica and Derek had managed to steal about $80,000 before they were stopped, but most of my estate was intact. Tyler was fully exonerated. The charges from the restaurant incident were expunged from his record. The state gave him a settlement for false arrest. He used the money to go to college, studying social work. He wanted to help other victims of elder abuse. Bernard Brennan's case was reopened. Investigators found evidence that his medications had been tampered with before his death. While they couldn't prove it definitively, the financial abuse case was clear. Jessica had to make restitution to Bernard's estate. Thomas Brennan's death was reclassified as a homicide. The investigation confirmed he'd been poisoned slowly over months. Most painfully, my husband's death was also reclassified. Medical experts reviewed his records and found evidence of consistent exposure to cardiac toxins. Jessica had killed her stepfather, the man who'd welcomed her into our family, who'd walked her down the aisle at her first wedding, who'd loved her like his own daughter. The trial took a year. Derek was convicted of 9 counts of murder, multiple counts of fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy. He received 9 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. Jessica was convicted as an accomplice to 2 murders, Bernard and my attempted murder, also fraud and elder abuse. She received 20 to 30 years. Her lawyer argued she'd been manipulated by Derek, that she hadn't known the full extent of his crimes. The jury showed some mercy because of that, but not much. At her sentencing, Jessica looked at me from across the courtroom. "I'm sorry, Mom," she said. "I'm so sorry." I didn't respond. I couldn't. She was my daughter, the child I'd raised, and she'd tried to kill me. She'd helped kill her stepfather. Some betrayals are too deep for forgiveness. Through it all, I learned things about myself I hadn't known. I learned that being 67 years old doesn't mean being helpless. That wisdom and experience are weapons, not weaknesses. That you can be knocked down, stripped of everything, declared incompetent and locked away, and still fight back. I learned that predators count on your silence, on your shame, on society's reluctance to believe that a daughter would hurt her mother. They count on you being isolated, on people dismissing your concerns as confusion or paranoia. But I also learned that there are good people in the world. Tyler, who risked everything to warn a stranger. Carmen, who tried to help even when it could cost her job. Martha and Susan, who believed me when no one else would. After it was over, after the trials and the sentencing, I went back to my house, my beautiful craftsman home with its lace curtains and memories. I thought about selling it, moving somewhere new, starting fresh. But this was my home. My husband and I had built a life here. I wouldn't let Derek and Jessica take that from me. Instead, I found a new purpose. I started volunteering with elder abuse prevention organizations. I spoke at senior centers, at legal aid offices, at police training sessions. I told my story. I warned people about the signs of financial exploitation, about how to protect themselves, about trusting their instincts when something feels wrong. Tyler became like a grandson to me. We stayed in touch. He visited regularly, brought his grandfather to my house sometimes. Bernard didn't know where he was anymore, but he seemed peaceful. Tyler and I would sit on my porch, drinking lemonade, and talk about the future. I was asked once, during a television interview about elder abuse, if I regretted having Jessica, if I wished I'd never had a daughter. The answer was complicated. The Jessica who'd tried to destroy me wasn't the little girl I'd raised. That little girl had been lost somewhere along the way, replaced by someone I didn't know. I mourned that loss. I mourned the daughter I should have had, the grandbaby I'd never meet now, the family I'd dreamed of. But I didn't regret surviving. I didn't regret fighting back, and I didn't regret using my story to help others avoid the same fate. I'm 70 now. 3 years have passed since that night at Giovanni's, since Tyler whispered his warning, since my life fell apart, and I had to rebuild it from nothing. I'm stronger than I was. More cautious, maybe. Less trusting, but also more sure of myself. I know what I'm capable of now. I know I can survive things I never thought I could endure. The house is paid off. My retirement accounts are secure, managed by a reputable firm with no connection to my family. I have a good lawyer. Martha Feldman came out of retirement to handle my affairs. I have friends who check on me regularly. I have a life. Derek is in prison. He'll die there. Jessica is in a women's correctional facility. She writes to me sometimes. I don't read the letters. Maybe someday I will, but not yet. The wound is still too fresh. I think about that waiter sometimes, Tyler's warning that saved my life. How different things would have been if he'd stayed silent, if he'd decided it wasn't his problem. I would have drunk that juice. I would have gotten drowsier, more confused. The setup would have continued, and I wouldn't have known to fight back. One person, one act of courage. It changed everything. That's what I tell people now when I speak about elder abuse. It takes just one person to make a difference. One person who speaks up, who believes the victim, who refuses to look away. If you're elderly and someone close to you is suddenly very interested in your finances, be cautious. If you're being pressured to sign documents, to change your will, to add someone to your bank accounts, get independent legal advice. If someone is isolating you from friends and family, controlling your communication, making you doubt your own memory, those are red flags. And if you see someone else being exploited, speak up. Be that person who makes the call, who asks the questions, who believes the victim. Be Tyler, because evil thrives in silence. It counts on people being too polite, too uncomfortable, too busy to interfere. But when we speak up, when we fight back, when we refuse to be victims, evil loses. I lost 3 years of my life to Derek and Jessica's scheme. I lost my daughter, my savings, my sense of security, but I gained something too. I gained the knowledge that I'm stronger than I ever knew, that age is not weakness, that it's never too late to fight for yourself. And I gained a mission, to make sure no one else goes through what I did, to help other elderly people recognize the warning signs, to encourage families to have honest conversations about aging, about finances, about protection and safety. My husband Thomas spent his career putting criminals in prison, fighting for justice. In the end, I got to finish his work. I got to expose his killers and make sure they faced consequences. I think he'd be proud of that. I know I am. So if you're watching this and you have elderly parents or grandparents, call them, visit them, make sure they're okay, make sure no one is taking advantage of them. And if you are elderly yourself, know this: you are not helpless, you are not powerless, you have rights, you have value, and you deserve protection and respect. Fight back, speak up, trust your instincts, and never, ever let anyone convince you that you're too old, too confused, or too weak to defend yourself, because you're not. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you or someone you know ever experienced financial exploitation by family members? What warning signs did you notice? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else recognize the danger signs before it's too late. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more true stories about survival, justice, and fighting back against injustice. Share this video with your friends and family, especially those who might be vulnerable. Together, we can protect our elderly loved ones and make sure predators like Derek and Jessica face consequences. Thank you for listening to my story. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, it's never too late to fight for yourself.